and we're recording.
Okay.
So, we decided to watch another classic, and we decided on Jaws.
Exactly.
And, dude, it's been... Honestly, I can't even remember when I watched it, but I had to have been a kid.
Right.
It's been that long ago.
Well, the movie came out in 1975.
Wow.
Which was 3 years before I was born. And a few more before you were born, I assume.
Yeah. 88.
Right. So quite a while ago.
13 years.
And one of the women in the movie who plays the mother of the...
Yes.
I think she was 46 at the time.
Okay.
She looks about 60 in the movie. So she was born in... I looked it up because I wanted to figure out how old she was.
Yeah.
She was born in 1929.
Wow.
So,
the mother of the boy.
Mother of the boy, though. Yeah.
That got killed. That you have a fascination with.
So, we'll get to the scene, but I'm like, she looks so old to be the mother of a young child, especially back then when people presumably had kids at a young age.
Right.
And then the fact that, the man that's with her is like 70 or 80. I mean,
yeah, he looks pretty old.
He doesn't have any speaking lines, but
is he credited as the husband?
I didn't really get into that, but no, he's definitely not the husband.
Right.
And we'll get into that, but because I think it just basically is there's a lot of this movie is very complex.
Kuna.
We've got a sharky dog in here.
Little crazy dog.
Well, we'll get to that about the complexities of this movie and the subtle storytelling. Things that are a lot of stuff's going on in this
much is going on.
It is basically a monster in the house story.
There's a monster.
Hang on there, yeah.
Oh God, I'm dying.
But it's such a simple concept.
Yeah.
There's a shark out there. They got to kill it.
Yeah,
and that's it. But there's so much in this movie that goes on. Great characters and all sorts of scenes. So, which is incredible. And that's why the movie's so great. It's like this very simple premise,
right?
But we're dealing with all sorts of issues.
Yeah, and to be honest, man, I didn't feel like the majority of the movie was a horror movie.
Right.
It felt like an adventure movie.
Exactly.
And the score was adventurous. To me. When they're out on the water,
right?
It was an adventurous aspect to that score,
and that's another great thing about the movie is that we keep ebbing and flowing from kind of very cliche jump scares and suspense horror type moments to almost like that adventure, like uplifting music and a lot of humor in the movie. There's some great jokes and sight gags and all stuff as well. So it's the real emotional roller coaster that
and you mentioned jump scares. I don't think there was one. There were two. There were two.
Yeah, and according to my research,
the
main jump scare that they were going for is the shark.
Yeah.
But they said because of the first jump scare they actually put in later of Ben Gardner's head poking through the hole in the boat, came first in the movie and got a bigger reaction. And then once the audience's guard is up, then the second jump scare of the shark, which was supposed to be the one jump scare, didn't get the same reaction that it did in test screenings.
You mean when he's throwing the bait?
Yeah.
And he pops up and he goes...
Yeah. And... so great in this movie. The acting is amazing, and because of various reasons, they don't show a lot of the shark and they don't show a lot of the gruesome stuff, although there is some pretty freaking gruesome stuff in this movie.
Yeah, really gruesome. I was shocked.
Yeah.
Like the leg falling to the bottom of the ocean.
That's what I was thinking of.
I was like, damn. It was... and I at no moment thought I was watching a movie in the 70s.
Right. It holds up. I mean, even though
technologically, there were some things where, like, they couldn't contact certain people. The radio goes out, and it's like maybe a cell phone would have helped on the beach. On the beach, maybe
they got walkie-talkies,
but it never It never was like, man, if they only had a cell phone, this whole thing would have been moot. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But what is a jump scare? Because I think I'm thinking of a jump scare as something different. I'm thinking a jump scare is something to scare you that actually isn't a part of the story or scary. Because like certain jump scares, you know, in the modern movies, right? Where it's getting quiet and they're walking around the corner, and then all of a sudden their friend jumps out. And it's like, oh, well, that's not the ghost that's haunting them. It's just their friend, the jump scare. So I'm going to look this up because
that's a variation on the jump scare.
Yeah, none of that was in this movie. None of that.
Well,
but what you're mentioning
a while ago, and
but what you're mentioning is that when he goes to the underneath the boat to check on the person, he's looking, and then the dead body's head pops out at him. That is part of the story. That's like, oh shit.
Well, jump scare can be part of the story, and I think
what is a jump?
People try to
scare.
Have tried to kind of reinvent it and do it in different ways and make it ironic. And
okay, so here's a definition. Yeah. A jump scare is a technique used in horror films and video games to surprise the audience with an abrupt change in image or event, usually concurring with a loud, jarring sound. It is a reflexive response to the danger on the screen and can be derived cheaply by having something scary suddenly appear on screen, often accompanied by loud shrieking music and a scream. The masters of the jump scare use it sparingly to emphasize a moment and really put us in the shoes of the main character. Jump scares can be intensely unpleasant, and it is almost impossible to shield oneself against them. The jump scare has been described as one of the most basic building blocks. So I guess there's variations of the jump scare.
Right.
But the best type of jump scare is something that actually moves the story forward and increases the awareness of the danger of where the character is, putting you in the situation of the character.
Right. Well, it's literally like something jumping out at you and also trying to get you to jump out of your seat.
Right. But I guess the best version is something related to the story that actually should be scary and not a fake jump scare.
Well, yeah, there's the cheap jump scare, like it's gratuitous.
Yeah, just like that the example I gave where everything is getting scary and the ghost should be around the corner, but it's his friend.
The more times you do it in a movie, each successive one becomes less surprise because you're then expecting it. So it's the unexpected nature of it that capitalizes on the effect.
And the only way that the one that I described in that example would like be important or be used properly is like right afterwards you have another jump scare where it's like the thing. The ghost does come out. It's like he's coming around the corner. Oh, it's just his friend.
Right.
Okay, well, let's go this way. Then boom, then the ghost
that's usually the cliche way that they do it now.
Yeah.
To try to like scare you, but then take your guard down back again.
Yeah.
And you don't expect it the second time. It's the unexpected nature that makes it effective.
Yeah. So let's just get into the story.
Sure.
And I'm going to pull up the Jaws summary.
Well, first we get that. We got to get a little context. So this was Spielberg's second ever theatrical movie that he directed.
Right.
The first one he did was a movie called Sugarland Express.
Starring the truck.
Yeah, it's Goldie Hawn. It's like a
truck movie, right?
A car chase, escape convict type thing. Never seen it. Might be worth watching.
Never seen it either.
But yeah, this is Spielberg's second movie. It had a budget of $9 million and, according to my research, made almost $500 million, like
476.5,
which is the equivalent to 2.7 billion dollars today.
Yeah.
So 50 times on your return. One of the most successful movies of all time. It was the highest grossing movie at the time until Star Wars, which came out 2 years later.
Wow.
And it broke the record of, I believe, Gone with the Wind, which came out in the 50s, I want to say. A while, that Gone with the Wind held the record for a long time.
Dang, that's crazy.
And so his second movie makes $1 bazillion, pretty much cements him as, this super successful director, which of course he kept doing over and over and over. He's, as far as bringing in the dollars, probably the most successful director of all time.
And this is interesting. In just 78 days, it overtook The Godfather as the highest grossing film at the North American box office. So The Godfather was out.
Oh, okay, right, yeah.
What a time.
Right.
Godfather, Jaws, 3 years later, Star Wars.
Right.
Isn't that wild, dude? What an interesting time.
Oh, it was a great time for movies.
So it says, Jaws became the highest-grossing film worldwide with rentals of $132 million, surpassing the $131 million of The Godfather. By the time of the third film in '83, Variety reported that it had earned worldwide rentals of $270 million. Jaws was the highest-grossing film of all time until Star Wars debuted 2 years later. Star Wars surpassed Jaws for the U.S. record 6 months after its release and set a new global record in '78. Wow.
And so it's said that Jaws was the first modern blockbuster, bringing that term into the modern lexicon. I always thought that blockbuster was a term that came from a bomb they used in World War II that could blow up an entire block.
Yeah.
Which might be true as well. But the term blockbuster in this case was because the line around the block to get in the theater went all the way around. So it like busted, as you know, the block was overflowing because people were just lined up around the corner. And
fascinating. So blockbuster.
So that's where blockbuster
the block
comes from. Yeah,
kind of.
Exactly. There's so many people on the block. They have to be across the street. They can't cross the street to get in line.
Yeah.
You know, they have to wait. There's the block's full. It's busted.
That's pretty cool.
You got to cross this. If you're trying to go down that sidewalk, you got to go around. Yeah, it's too many people.
Dang.
So
man. That's so wild.
Yeah. People were waiting in line for who knows how long.
But that kind of goes back to, it kind of gives me chills to kind of like discover these things as we watch these old movies. But like blockbuster is the first technical understanding of a blockbuster.
Right.
But what I was saying earlier about this, at moments, it's a horror film, right? A suspenseful
Some very cliche horror film scenes.
Yeah, but it's not cliche.
We'll get into
70.
That. We'll get
you
into
know
that.
what I mean? It became, types of these scenes have become cliche, but based on this, right? But like I said, at some points I felt like it was an adventure movie.
Oh yeah, it's got a lot of stuff going. It's very complex.
And so like at some point I was like, damn, this is kind of like a Sinbad. Remember Sinbad, Voyage of the Seven Seas or something like that?
Haven't
the
seen
old
it.
claymation.
I'm familiar, though. Yeah.
Did you never watch those? It was kind of like made like Clash of the Titans, the original Clash of the Titans,
right.
Claymation stuff.
Yeah.
And kind of similar to that, where you're like kind of going on an adventure and you're fighting monsters.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like Clash of the Titans could be considered a horror movie.
Right.
You know what I mean?
There's because
there's a monster.
There's differences and there's similarities between the genres.
But that kind of makes sense, a blockbuster, because you would not consider horror movies today blockbusters.
No.
They don't draw that type of attention.
So the other thing that Jaws did for the first time, presumably, was that it was marketed in the summer. Before Jaws, the theaters put out their movies in the summer that were bad because they thought everybody's going to be enjoying the nice weather. They don't want to go inside.
Oh, wow.
Right. And
so Christmas time was
usually the time this released, and that's when Jaws was supposed to be released, but they went into all sorts of production problems because this is the first movie made at sea underwater like this. Like, the mechanical shark's always breaking down. So it was almost an accident that it was released during the summer. And at the time, they phased kind of movies in. They released them in smaller markets to kind of test the waters.
Yeah.
and then slowly started building up the number of theaters showing them and doing it by word of mouth. But for some reason they said, okay, this is going to come out in the summer. We're going to release it. At the time, I think the most simultaneous theater release, just a massive release, and with a lot of advertising. And it was a huge success. So that became the model of not just the blockbuster, but the summer blockbuster of really, having this, grand adventure epic movie come out in the summer, heavily promote it, put it in a lot of theaters simultaneously. And that became the model for success for Hollywood up until this day.
Wow.
So there's a lot. They called it it's a watershed moment in Hollywood that changed the paradigm of how they made and marketed and released distributed movies.
That's wild, man.
Yeah.
And going back to like highest grossest movies of all time. This is a list of the highest grossing movies of all time adjusted for ticket price inflation.
Mm-hmm.
Number 1, Still Gone with the Wind. 2, Star Wars. 3, Sound of Music. 4, E.T. 5, Titanic. 6, 10 Commandments. 7, Jaws.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Dude, I mean, look at these movies on this list, dude. This is the list we should just go back on.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, the old Dr. Zhivago.
Right.
Classic.
Haven't seen that one. Want to see it someday.
It's a tough one to get through. It's an older, dramatic romance movie. But 10 Commandments,
right?
Those sets, I think that was when they were doing, was that Technicolor? It had to have been Technicolor, right? It was MGM.
Yeah, probably.
And then Ben-Hur, you've got The Exorcist, which you got to watch again. Yeah, dude, 101 Dalmatians.
Some older movies.
61, dude. 101 Dalmatians was 61.
They weren't charging a lot for tickets back then, and then you adjust for inflation as well. Like, what is it, $20 a ticket nowadays?
It's so wild.
People were paying like $1.
Yeah.
Maybe.
All right, so let's get into the plot. So it opens up, Chrissy Watkins goes skinny dipping in the ocean.
Well, we got the credit.
Evening.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, Chrissy Watkins.
But it does start with that underwater.
Right, we're underwater.
Going
we
through
get the
weeds.
credits.
Mm-hmm.
Musical score by the great John Williams, who did Star Wars 2 years later.
Yeah, oh, wow. Okay. I didn't realize that.
Yeah, he was the Star Wars guy.
But what I realized about the score is it's people parody the score.
Right.
Dun, dun.
Right.
Dun, 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 dun. And it's not really like that. There's more going on in the score instead of those hard notes.
Well, it's described as very minimalistic, and Spielberg said, haha, that's funny. Where's the theme song?
What's that? He said what?
Well, Spielberg, when he heard the score, he jokingly said, like, okay, well, where's the theme song to the shark?
Right. Got it.
But that was the theme of the shark.
Yeah.
But yeah, it opens with this underwater, swimming, shark swimming underwater.
POV shot.
POV, exactly.
Yeah.
With the credits. And then it just sort of ends without any out seeing the shark.
Yeah. Goes to the campfire.
A soft ending. Yeah. Then we go to what becomes the cliche horror movie scene of a bunch of...
I was telling Courtney that. I was like, this is such a cliche thing that people started doing.
Right.
But like to juxtapose rapture, passion, like letting loose, hanging out with the
being
friends,
carefree.
Passing a joint.
Right.
Yeah.
There's some joints being passed around.
Dude's
some
playing a
beers,
guitar.
Playing guitar.
One girl sitting by herself, being alone, off to the side, and one guy being like, "Hey,
yeah, what's up?" He's drinking a beer and smoking a cigarette with the same
getting
hand.
real loose.
And there's sand on the bottom of the beer can. Like this whole scene there's a lot of thought. The way everyone's set up, the camera is gliding by. You see this whole group of people and them partying in various ways. And it is a very cliche thing. It's like, all the horny teens who are drunk and high with sex on their mind at the beach. It's very carefree.
Yeah.
It's the reason it becomes such a great, a great thing to do in a horror movie is because it's like distracting your brain. All of a sudden, you're not thinking about like monsters and scary things. You're like, some sexy time to be going on, or some drugs and stuff. It's a distraction. It's a misdirection.
Yeah, and I mean, other than this male actor chasing her in the most goofy way,
of course.
But
drinking saved his life.
Drinking saved. He did. He was too drunk to follow her into the ocean.
Right, exactly.
And she was not drunk enough.
Right, exactly.
But even the way that she stripped naked.
It's very provocative. Yes.
Yeah, it's provocative, but they didn't show too much because it was dark.
Right.
So you saw the outline of her body, but not everything.
We know she's at least topless. She could be.
You saw her
nude.
tits bouncing as she ran, and you're like, I do
Hello.
want to see more here.
That's very nice. Yes.
Follow her into the ocean,
attention.
please.
Right.
And so, but he doesn't.
Right. He's too drunk to undress. Like he's just kind of.
He's like, I'm coming, and just falls down and kind of passes out. So
I can swim, but I can't stand up.
Yeah. She goes in, and she kind of gets tugged on a couple times, right? And then what was very, I'm pretty sure I'm recalling this correctly, and tell me if I'm not, but like the way they drug, so she kind of gets like caught by the shark and gets drugged sideways.
Yeah.
But the camera doesn't follow her.
Right.
I didn't feel like the camera followed her completely. It kind of kept the frame, and she kind of like, kind of went out of frame a little bit and got dragged. And it's just like, oh shit.
It's a very good technique, jarring. Because this movie is all about what we see and what we don't see.
Yes.
And it's the things that we don't see that scare us.
Yeah.
Because that engages our imagination. It's very, that's why this movie is great, because it engages your imagination to a very high degree.
Yeah.
You have to sort of fill in the blanks, imagine what these people are looking like. Your imagination is...
Where's this shark attached on her body?
Can be way more powerful than what you can actually show. Mm-hmm. And of course, they did this for various reasons, a lot of them technical. But you know, you go with what you know, you use it, works. And so many of these type of moments in the movie that totally work and make it better than if they had been, you know, super focused on every detail of showing you what's happening.
Right.
Because we don't see below water. There's a lot of
below. We just see that POV shot, which is creepy as shit. Because when has anyone seen that shot before? I feel like that was not maybe Creature from the Black Lagoon.
Yeah.
Maybe that was the
There's
only
probably
one.
a lot of that's kind of where the cliches come from, I think, because that was a very famous horror movie back in the day, and this Jaws has a lot of similarities to that. There's like they're both monsters in the water.
Yeah, and if you think about, wow, I hadn't thought about. I watched Creature from the Black Lagoon so much on VHS as a kid. I love that one, but it's an adventure movie as well. Mm-hmm. They're going to the Amazon to discover this, this reptilian fossil that they found. They're like, evolution has caused change in animals, since the dawn of time. We're going to find what is deep in the Amazon. Right. What's out there that's been evolved and just surviving.
Right. So the shark grabs this girl. It's great acting. She's like stunned. I thought, I've heard different accounts of like shark attacks and things, and it seems very realistic of like she's like in shock, stunned. Like, what is that? I don't know what's going on. Yeah. You don't know if the shark has bitten her legs off or not. Yeah. Or just grabbed a hold of them. I mean,
you don't know
what's under there. You don't know how big the shark is yet. We see her being drug around. So you're like, this is probably a pretty big shark if it's just thrown around like a rag doll.
Yeah.
And then she disappears, like pulling on the water, and it's silence.
And the water chills.
Yeah.
The waves just chill.
Like she was never there. Just disappeared.
Exactly. And then he's on the beach asleep.
And then, he's on.
And so the first shot we see of Chief Brody?
Chief Brody and wife
is with his wife, right?
The sun is coming into the bedroom window.
Right, that's right.
And he remarks, why is the sun coming in here? It didn't used to come into the window.
We moved here in the fall.
Right. And the wife says, well, because we bought the house in the fall and it's now the summer. So this is some great like storytelling, like organically telling us some information.
Yeah, they've been here for this long.
Right. They just got there, or they've been here for less than a year.
Yeah.
The seasons have changed. It's now the summer.
Yeah.
Which has all those implications later on.
Right.
It's the busy season for this island that depends on summer tourism. Mm-hmm. So he gets up. The kids are already out playing or whatever. He's like, where are the kids?
Right.
And he's getting ready to go to work. She jokingly, at one point, calls him Chief, be careful out there, Chief, or whatever she says.
Yeah.
And we see him get into a big truck with police department on that. So we were told, obviously, he's the chief of police.
Right.
We established that without someone coming out and saying, hello, chief of police, Brody, you're, whatever, like a very robotic, rundown. We get those details in a very organic, realistic way.
And one thing, I kind of thought that he was not her husband in that opening scene, because he kind of got up out of bed before her, kind of like with a little resentment, or not resentment, but like conscious, like not resentment, but we were like, shit, about time for me to get out of here. You know what I mean? Like a one night stand kind of a attitude. That's at least how I felt.
Interesting.
Because he got up and he was like, yeah, why is the sun coming in here?
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, the
and
thing
she's
is,
just
like,
laying there kind of like, just enjoying the moment.
well, usually the parents would already be up before the kids.
Right. And I didn't see any animosity between the two, you know?
Right.
Like sometimes when people write married couples, there's like resentment or you see they're overly fond of each other. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, we're a great couple. Or we're a couple and it's been
they've
a
been
long
married
time
for a while.
and
So, yeah.
And I almost felt like he was like sleeping with a woman who had a kid,
Could be.
you know?
But back then, that would be...
But I don't know, just the way it was kind of presented in a way. I don't know. And then he comes out and then she's like, tell daddy bye or something like that. And I'm like, oh, okay, cool.
Well, he is established throughout the movie with lots of details of being this really like loving father. Like he really loves his kids.
Oh, that was an amazing scene at the dinner table.
Right.
Where he's sitting there and the kid, his kid
is mirroring
mimicking him.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. And he goes like this or something like that. And the kid goes like that. And then
he does the things with his, fingers and the kids at that. And then, he says, come in here.
Yeah. And he was like, give me a kiss.
He's like,
why? Because I need one. I need one right now or something like that.
Kid kisses him and he's like, get out of here.
Yeah. That was such a great scene.
Of course. Yeah.
Yeah, that was just like a really grounding scene for that character. And just like you see scenes that are written sometimes where you're like, the writer really understands humans.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like on a base level. Sometimes a scene can be like very formulaic or stereotypical.
Right.
And then you see like a little nuance.
It's very unique.
Yeah, you're like, okay, these are humans here. These aren't characters,
right,
in this movie.
And that scene doesn't move the story forward.
Yeah, not at all.
But it's a very human moment. And
yeah,
to me, the whole movie it's one of the most realistic movies.
Yeah,
there is. If you want to, at no time do you feel like they're on a sound stage or that you're being bombarded with like special effects.
Yeah, no, and at no point do you think that any of the three main characters are like acting.
Right.
It's just they're just so perfectly cast in those roles. Even Robert Shaw. I mean, good God, dude.
Right. And it's a real boat on the real ocean for the most part. I'm sure there was some scenes shot in a big tank and some other things. But for the most part, like that's why this movie was such an undertaking.
Right.
Because it's on the water. And as we learned, there's a lot of stuff that can happen on the water that has nothing to do with the Shrek that's super dangerous.
Yeah. So anyways, he goes to the police station.
Right.
And he finds out the coroner.
Right. They've got a call. Well, the two things that I noticed in this opening sequence, there's an ashtray by the bed.
Okay.
And he has two phones. There's a very funny moment where the phone rings. He picks up one phone. He's like, hello, not the right phone. He picks up an identically colored phone that are both in the kitchen. And he's like, hello. So I guess you can infer that because he's the chief of police, he has a line for social calls and a line for business calls. This is 1975.
Right.
I grew up in the early 70s or late 70s, early 80s. Like having two lines was like unheard of. And we're having two phones right next to each other.
Yeah.
So
that makes sense.
But that's probably why he's a police chief.
Yeah.
And actually this lays the groundwork for the phone calling montage that comes later.
Yeah.
Like, how are they both on the phone at the same time? He's got two lines. It's
right.
Okay.
So he goes to the station, finds out there's something, there's
we pass a giant billboard that says, welcome to Amity. It says there's a summer celebration of some kind going on these dates. There's a girl on a surfboard.
Yep.
We establish where we are. And so that's a great set, just great opening setup. We have all the information that we need to move forward.
Yeah.
And so the guy the drunk guy from the last night has concerned this girl drowned.
Right.
She disappeared. Like, I passed out. I don't know where she went.
Yeah. And so they go to the beach.
So they're looking for her.
And they
hear some whistles.
Parts of her body.
Right. Well, there's crabs all over it.
Yeah.
Just super gross.
Yeah.
And we see the hand sticking out of the beach.
Yeah.
So presumably that's maybe one of the few things left.
Right. And so he's thinking it's a shark attack.
That's what he puts on the report. He types shark attack in the report.
Right. And then the mayor.
Right.
Or he's going to the beach. He gets on the ferry.
Well, before that, so so they see the girl, call the coroner, pick up the body. Brody goes back to the office. He's got his secretary. He's disorganized. He's trying to type up the report, types in possible shark attack. And then he's on his way into town. He's like, where do we keep the beach closed signs? We don't have any. We've never had to close the beach. He's an outsider. He's from New York.
Yeah.
We find out he's scared of the water.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
So that raises the stakes in this movie.
Yeah.
He's out of his element.
Right.
But he does have, he's a very competent law officer.
Yeah.
So he's going to make some signs. He goes to the art supply store, knocks over some brushes.
Yeah.
To make these signs.
Yeah.
And he's trying to coordinate everything with his deputies. They're like, well, there's some Boy Scouts swimming over on the North Island or whatever.
Yeah.
So we got to take the ferry over there, get him out. There's no phone to call him.
Yeah.
So we should probably, they're doing their mile swim or something for their merit badge. So we should probably get those kids out of the water.
Yeah.
He gets on a ferry.
So as soon as the ferry gets there, the mayor rolls up
in his Cadillac.
In his Cadillac,
which at the time was the most fanciest, richest person car you could have.
So they get on the ferry together.
Right.
And by the end of that short ferry ride, the mayor has convinced him to not stop the Boy Scout swimming thing.
Right. The mayor does not want to panic.
Because he doesn't want to panic. He wants the revenue of the summer tourism.
We're a summer town. We need those summer dollars.
Yeah.
It's economic concerns. He's got two other fat cat rich guys with him, and the deputy and the ferry off. The car has separated everybody from each other. The deputy and some other guy is on one side of the car. Brody's on the left side of the screen with the rich guys.
Yeah.
The mayor, who has his flamboyant suits.
Yeah.
He's wearing his nautical themed suit with the anchors on it.
Right. And you see that Brody's character, Chief Brody, because the mayor brings up the fact that he's from New York.
Mm-hmm.
And he was like, it's almost like, I understand, because I had a teacher in high school who was a New York City police officer who moved down to North Carolina and became a police officer near his retirement time, like the last few years, into a smaller town in North Carolina, But he wasn't like this tough, New York cop.
Right.
He was a kind of just a very smart guy. He was a history teacher at my high school, and he taught AP criminal justice. And so that's how I was in his class for. But I think in this moment where the mayor is like, hey, look, this isn't New York City. This is, you see that someone from New York with the reputation, like you're a cop in New York City, you know how to deal with all kinds of stuff, and you're going to take action and blah, blah, blah. You move down to a smaller town, and you're just going to run the place. Not so.
Right.
The politics of the town always run everything, right? So he's got all this capability, all this knowledge, this resume from New York City. He comes down to this little beach town, and he's being controlled by the mayor.
Well, it's always...
And he's being stifled.
It's another kind of cliche thing that we see in the movies, like, this isn't the way we do things around here, and they may do that from where you are, but you've got to learn how we operate.
Right. But cliche, but true.
Right.
I mean, it's like, just because it's cliche doesn't mean that it's not true.
Right.
There's corny ways of doing a true thing that always occurs, and to where it's cliche.
Right.
It's not nuanced.
It's a trope.
Right. But this was very, it was understandable to use this in this scenario because it is a town, it's a very small town, and they get all their revenue during the tourism season in the summer.
It's a legitimate concern.
And the mayor's like, hey, look,
right,
I'm the mayor. We make money here. Your New York City ass ain't going to change things around here when it comes to how we bring in revenue.
Right.
And so his hands are tied. And you see that Chief Brody is not that, well, I'm the sheriff here now, and you're going to listen. he's like, it's more realistic. He's like, yeah, I guess. I mean, I can't do anything. It's like, okay, I'll go along. I won't say it's a shark attack.
Right. Well, the mayor sort of convinces him, like, you don't know for sure that it was a shark attack. So you...
And it's true. And Brody is a reasonable person.
Right.
And so he's like, it's true. I don't technically know. So I guess I'll go along with, because there's a lot at stake here.
Right.
Revenue for the town. I don't want to be the person getting in the way, but I also want to be careful. And I don't have enough evidence here. Okay, cool. Have your way.
Right. And maybe there are some things I can do short of closing the beaches that will keep people safe.
Yeah.
And the interesting thing is he is the police chief, but there's no crime on the island, basically, as he mentions later. So his job is primarily about public safety. So the mayor's like, don't close. You can't close the beaches, but do whatever else you feel is necessary to keep people safe.
Yeah.
So your knee-jerk reaction that this is a shark attack, close the beaches, it's an overreaction.
Right.
There's probably some other ways. We don't want to jump to conclusions. We don't want to cause a panic that could kill our summer revenue.
But it's all money based.
Right.
It's like, hey, let's not close it
right
first because of money.
Economic concerns have trumped the public safety concerns.
Yeah, absolutely.
In this instance.
Yeah. All right, and so that happens, and then the beach stays open.
Right.
And Chief Brody's there.
Now he's a lifeguard.
Yeah, now he's a lifeguard. He's hanging out with his family.
Right.
His kids are playing in the ocean.
He's trying. There's some great shots that go on here. Yeah, he's trying to watch the water. Different people are coming up to him and talking about some problems they have, and we see a great use of split focus where the girl in the water is in focus and the guy that's right in front of his face are in focus. Split down the screen. There's that, and then
he's trying to keep his attention on the ocean.
He's trying to watch the ocean. Of course, it's not really a jump scare, but it's like a false alarm. He sees the girl scream. He's like, "Oh, is that no? She's just being picked up by a guy, like a piggyback. The guy's messing around with her."
Yeah.
So okay, so that's nothing. But then we do actually see a shark attack a kid who's on a floaty, and when he sees that, and we see kind of a fin flip, and there's a lot of blood.
That was such a great scene,
right? And we see what the another great camera technique that's often overused is the dolly. Is called the dolly zoom.
Yeah,
and it's where I believe the camera's on rails.
Yep,
and the camera pulls out while it's zooming in at the same time.
You actually dolly into him as you're zooming out.
Yeah, one or the other.
Yeah, yeah, you can do the reverse.
You can do and it changes the perspective of the camera foreground, but you're still the same you're the still same distance from
that type of camera work really does create a feeling
for
the audience. Yeah, and if you do it wrong, you just misuse that technique.
And you don't want to overuse it. You don't want to use. There's a few other split focuses, but you could overuse almost any technique. But it's a great time to use it.
Perfect time.
He sees the shark going.
I mean, one of the most iconic shots in all of film.
I mean, there's so many great shots in this film. The way everything's framed, and we see Brody at the from the beginning sequence, like they shoot this in a real town. There's real people that they've hired all the locals to be extras.
Yeah,
and there's a lot of wide shots, a great establishing shots of like where we are. We see him from far away walking through the town. We see him on the beach walking through a sea of people at certain points. So it really establishes the realism of the movie of like we're not on a sound stage. This is a real place with real people.
Yeah, and another shot, where the shark gets the kid. Mm-hmm. It's a static shot. Mm-hmm. The camera's not moving.
Right,
and you just see this shark twist.
Yeah,
because you see the fin,
some fins,
and then just the blood just
pull
quickly in the ocean, and again the kids kind of. It's weird because the kids stayed up, kind of, right? But the body of the shark twisted,
right?
And then the blood went, and then he went under or something like that.
Right.
There's so much going on there, and you're like, what? You're trying to see it, and you're like, oh shit, what the?
And it's another like far away shot. You don't hear the sound of it, and it is if you are on the beach observing.
You hear all the kids and everybody playing, and you don't really hear anything with that like maybe a little faint scream from the kid, but that's about it.
Right.
So then everybody rushes off, and then that was a great moment where everybody had gotten their kid, and then the mom went out in front of everybody. And she's like, "What? Where's my boy?" And they hold on that,
right?
And that was like that's really pivotal emotionally for the audience to be like, yeah, it's not just a kid died, but it's like also now this one mother is lost, doesn't know where
her son's gone.
That's where you really feel like, you feel her pain.
Yeah.
You know?
She's out there. Again, we don't see there's no husband. It's very well established. Like
you got a thing with this.
She doesn't have a husband. She doesn't have any other kids, and she's probably too old to have kids anymore. So like that was her one kid. She's not gonna have any more. She doesn't have a husband either. They make it as tragic as possible.
Yeah.
But very subtly so.
Right.
It's never mentioned that she doesn't have a husband or that that's her only kid. Like she never says, "Oh, my only boy" or anything. But it is very heavily implied if you think about it, and it really heightens that loss and the tragedy.
Yeah. And so then they create a town meeting in a classroom.
Yeah.
In a classroom in the
metal
school.
chairs. Right.
Yeah.
And we have all the busybodies in there.
The mayor's there running the thing, and they're like asking.
The council members are at the table.
What should happen?
Brody is sitting on a table, so he's separated from the council members, and all the people are in there. And there's like a lady who's very annoying, and she's a motel owner, and everybody's sounding off their opinion. And
and then it's presented. Quint puts his fingers on the wall, on the chalkboard.
Right. Well, let's get to that because people want to know what happened, and so their one question is, "Are you going to close the beaches?" Yeah. And Brody says there's a big pause because he knows that they're not going to like it. There's a lot of great pauses in this movie.
Yeah,
where they hold for a beat or more, however long a beat is. But it's sometimes 2 or 3 beats. They don't just take a beat. It's like a 2-3 beat
time
pause. And he says, yes. But then the mayor chimes in, but only for 24 hours. And Brody's like, I never agreed to that.
Right.
And then someone in the background, maybe this lady, but somebody else says, 24 hours, that's like 3 weeks.
I know. Yeah, that's funny.
So, but then we've got, there's shots of this whole crowd of people. Quint's not in there.
No.
And the blackboard is blank.
Yeah.
When everybody gets there. But then, this is such a great establishing introduction to a character. He runs his fingers on the blackboard. It's just like a super awful.
Yeah.
But it shows like he knows exactly what to do. It's not too little, not too much to get everybody's attention. It shows he's tough and he's salt of the earth. Like he's no big deal to him to scratch his nails out. It's like super awful to everyone else. So it's showing he's a tough grizzly guy. And he's drawn a shark while everybody was talking, he drew a giant shark on the chalkboard with a guy in its mouth.
Yeah.
And so, seemingly appeared out of nowhere.
Yeah.
And then he's got everybody's attention.
Yeah, and he just tells them, hey, it's a shark. Pay me $10,000 and I'll kill it.
Well, the Kintner mother, as one of the things they talked about earlier, is the mother has offered a $3,000 bounty on the shark. It's her deal. They asked the mayor about it. It's like, well, it's not us. It's her. We haven't, the city hasn't offered up this bounty. It's this woman. But that's going to bring in all sorts of yahoos and shark hunters and whatnot to kill the shark. So, Brody's not happy about that.
Right.
And, but Quint comes in. He says, I'll find it for $3. But if you want the whole head, tails, fins, kit and caboodle, you can, you pay me 10.
Yep.
And I'll get it done. Just me, not all these yahoos.
Yep. And then he just walks out.
Right. And they're like, we'll take that under advisement.
Right.
He's like, you know where to find me.
Yeah.
Great
accent.
And he's got a little minion with him.
Yeah. That we really never see
speaks
again.
Yeah, we do. When they're loading up the boat, we see this one guy.
Right, but briefly. He doesn't play more of a part after that.
No speaking well, but it's like he's got a minion.
Yeah. and so then Matt Hooper comes to town, the oceanographer, as everybody is leaving to go hunt a shark.
All the yahoos are on their boats.
Right.
They don't know what they're doing.
Right. And so Brody's like, "Oh, you're Hooper. You're the oceanography."
Right. They brush him off, and he's trying, and you know,
and then he's like, "All right, let's go look at the body." We look at the body. Richard Dreyfuss does such a good job of this role,
right? Of the scene of the autopsy.
Yeah, just all within that role, man. He was just like, you're like, this guy's obsessed with sharks. Like, he loves this stuff, and he knows what he's talking about. He does the examination, realizes that it's a shark.
Yeah.
Most definitely a shark. And he measures the diameter of his mouth.
Yeah.
Then they go back to the where the boats are, and everybody's come back, and they've caught a tiger shark.
Well, let's go back to the autopsy scene, because there's a lot of things that I love about this scene. You know, presumably at some point Brody originally put shark attack in there, but he's probably, the coroner might have changed it due to pressure of the mayor. The mayor's like, it's a boating accident. It's happened before. Like, she went out there, swam, passed out when I got run over by a boat. Happened before. So the report's been changed. The coroner has signed off on possible boating accident. And so Richard Dreyfuss, he gets down to business. He's like, sees the body. He's got to drink some water because his, mouth dried out. He's going through the rundown of all the stuff he sees about it. Yeah. Brody pulls out a cigarette. He's like, "Don't smoke in here, thank you." One of the times Brody pulls out some cigarettes for some strange reasons, but and there's actually I want to say a bad edit, but there's a wonky edit where he says, like, "Don't smoke in here." Then we cut to him pulling like kind of a severed or mangled arm, and he says, "This is what happens." Then it cuts to something else. So usually when people say, like, "This is what happens," they usually say, "This is what happens when a shark bites a person," or whatever. But when we close up to that, we see him just say, "This is what happens," and they cut to something else. Mm-hmm. So I believe that shot's like added in later, or was part of a bigger sequence that was more gory, and they just chopped that out to have a little bit of gore or the right amount, and with that dialogue that was in there, and it's kind of unnoticeable. It's a little wonky, but if it's like if there's an imperfection in this movie, that's it, and that's all that all it is. And most people, I'd watched the movie many times, but I noticed that this last time I watched it, I was like, oh, that's kind of interesting. It's interesting to see if there were any like mistakes or edits. I mean, this was a tough movie to make for sure, so a lot of that stuff, could get by. But yeah, he goes, "This wasn't any boating accident." Like, he sort of shames the coroner, who's some old guy that's slumped against the wall, doesn't ever say anything.
Right. Yeah. And then they find the tiger shark. Right. And everybody's happy, and the mayor's happy. He's like, "Well, this is it." Right. And then
everyone's posing for pictures.
Hooper measures the jaws. Right. And he's like, "This is not even close to what the diameter of the bite on the body was." Right. So this could have been it, but it's most likely not. There's something else out there.
Well, he actually says, because like everybody's happy, and he's a smart guy, and you see how he is placating people a little bit. He's like, this could be the shark. It possibly is. I hope it is. Like, he knows that these people are on a high, and he doesn't want to be like, "This isn't the shark, you idiots." Yeah. But he says, "This is probably the shark. They got him. Like, hooray! This is great." But the fact is, the bite radius on the shark does not match the kid. Yeah. And like you and Brody can connect the dots. Like, okay, this isn't the shark. Yeah.
And then
he's like, but he's like, "You want to be sure. We all want to be sure. Let's cut this shark open. We want and we'll know for sure." Right. And the mayor rightfully so says, "This isn't the time or place to do that. I don't want the body of poor little the Kintner boy spilling onto the docks in front of the press."
And then all of a sudden, the mother shows up.
Right, she shows up.
And so she confronts Brody, and this is your favorite scene in the whole movie.
Oh yeah, it's the greatest scene. It is. I mean, she's not in the movie that much, but it is a very powerful scene. Some great acting. And she totally shames the police chief. So we go from the highs of like, "Oh, we caught the sharks, problem solved," to, "Oh, we forgot about this mother whose kid died." Yeah. And who probably is in the belly of that shark.
Yeah.
So they assume. And she's 46-year-old. She looks like at least 50, if not 60 years old.
How do you know she's 46?
I looked it up. I looked up the actress, and I looked when she was born. Born in 1929. Movie came out in 75. Do the math.
Oh, so she was 46 as a person.
Yes.
Okay.
So,
got it.
anyway.
I thought you were talking about in the movie. She was supposed to be 46.
I mean, yeah, that's one of the sort of things you look at. It's like, how is she the mother of a young boy? She looks too old to have, and then the guy behind her who's even older. It's like, well, if that's her husband, then it just skews the whole, because that's the two people we see.
Yeah.
It just skews your estimation of her age. The average age of the two people on screen are really old. And I think it's just subtly saying, like, there's no husband. This is probably her father or some other guy.
It's ambiguous. Like, we do not know.
It's just implied.
Yeah.
But
it never pulled me out of the story, seeing that she was a little older.
Right.
I know it did for you. You're like, okay, this is interesting. She looks too old to have been having a child. But it didn't pull me out at all. I didn't.
It heightens the loss.
It almost was like, I don't know. I mean, it was almost like more emotional because she was older.
Mm-hmm.
A young mother. Being emotional, young woman, like, oh my God, baby. But this was a woman who like held her own, like kept her emotions at bay. Also, it wasn't like, you did this.
Right.
It was just like she was an older woman and had seen a lot.
Well, what it could have been is, this is she doesn't really have any real lines at the beach scene. But this is the one scene she's in, and we don't see her for the rest of the movie. So if you're the casting of this part, it's like, we want to get the person who just nailed this one thing. And so that could have been the actress. They could have seen a bunch of actresses of different ages.
They might have thought, and we want somebody in their 30s.
Right.
But then this woman just blows them out of the park with that audition.
She nailed it. And
you're like,
okay,
this is better.
It's plausible.
Yeah.
Let's go with it.
Yeah, absolutely.
She slaps Brody in the face. Apparently, she didn't know how to fake a slap, so she was really slapping him like for the 17 takes it took.
Wow.
Knocked the glasses off at one point. And so Brody is shamed. They go from the high of catching the shark, posing for the pictures, and then she's like, you knew about this, and you still let people go in. Like, you didn't do your job. My son is dead because of you. This, it's like, this death is on your hands. And the mayor says, oh, she's wrong, because it's really on he's the one who made the decisions.
Right.
And so, of course, he says, no, she's wrong. And Brody's saying, no, she's right.
Yeah. And you see that he has conviction. Mm-hmm. He's got a conscience. Drastically different than the mayor.
Right.
And
it hasn't quite sunken in.
What do you mean?
With the mayor? With the mayor, it takes...
Oh, he will not allow it.
Right.
He's going to
do everything in his power to ignore the problem.
Although, it was actually a really good scene when the boy was murdered and they were at the hospital.
Mm-hmm.
And Chief Brody was in there talking to his wife, and his wife was like, she was going to go home or something like that.
Right.
And then the mayor comes in. And Chief Brody kind of gets aggressive. Hey, look, let's talk. I need to talk to you. And pulls him into this side little room, surgery room or whatever in the hospital. And the mayor is just kind of inconsolable in a way. And he was like, hey, look, we have to shut this beach down. Like, can't have this happening again, kind of a thing.
Well, we've skipped ahead, actually. We've missed two key scenes. Or actually, three.
No, this was right after the murder of the boy. So we actually skipped this one. Because remember, because what he says is, right?
No. Okay.
This was later.
This gets confusing.
This was a later one.
I was afraid this was going to happen.
Okay, go ahead.
Because
this was after the next murder.
Right, the next shark attack.
Got it.
So the body of the boy was never found, the Kintner boy.
That's right. That's right.
And so what happens then is, he's shamed.
Yeah.
Or for letting this happen.
Mm-hmm.
So we cut to the scene that we were talking earlier, where he's at the dinner table.
Mm-hmm.
He's very distraught because he didn't,
he feels the burden of not protecting this boy, and
he didn't do
his
job.
Yeah.
Or safety.
Yeah.
And so this is a massive failure. The weight of this kid's death and the mother's loss is on his mind. He's not eating his food. His son is mimicking him.
Yeah.
He does all this. We cut to the Brody household, and then Richard Dreyfuss Hooper comes in.
Yep.
And he has 2 bottles of wine, a red and a white.
Eats Brody's food.
Right? Was anybody eating this? And he starts to eat. And it's a great scene because he knows this is like an awkward situation.
Yeah.
He's imposing on them. He's wearing a suit and tie. Like he's dressed up to come over for dinner.
Right.
As one would do if they were invited, but he wasn't invited. So he's really kind of playing it up as much as possible to be as ingratiated as possible, or something like that. Be the best guest. He's bringing the wine. That's very thoughtful. There's a very funny moment when.
But is he that thoughtful though?
He put on a suit and a tie to come over.
Yeah, but he's eating Brody's food. He literally pulls his plate over and starts eating.
Another kind of funny moment,
and that's why him and Robert Shaw quint.
Right.
That's why they clash.
For a number of reasons.
Yeah.
Well, this is such a great scene. The wife is talking to him. So he kind of noticed he can't go directly at Brody. That he knows that Brody's very upset. So that's probably why he eats the food, is because like, I don't know what else to do in this situation.
Yeah.
I've come over for dinner. I'm gonna eat some food. There's a whole plate of food here. Anybody eating that? Oh, mind to do that to kind of cement himself. I'm here. I'm having dinner with you guys.
Right.
The wife is talking and she's like, how are you so interested in sharks? And he tells the story about he was attacked by a shark and he's been studying sharks ever since.
Yeah.
And that's when, Brody opens the wine. There's wine glasses all over the place, but he pours the wine into a regular glass, which is bigger,
Yeah. Yeah.
And so, he's already drunk. There's a lot of scenes where people get drunk in this movie.
Yeah.
So wife is talking to Hooper, and
Brody cannot get into like, oh, it's just a dinner.
Right.
There's too much weight on his shoulders.
Right.
And so when he starts talking, he's like, what about this? He's talking to Hooper like, I need answers here.
Right. I need to know what to do. I have no idea.
And Hooper's like, oh, okay, yeah, well, this, and this, and blah, blah, blah.
Right.
Like it's hard for him to, how some people just, the weight, the heaviness of certain situations, they can't sit in. Mm-hmm. They just have to do something. Okay, cool. And it's not like they don't care. It's just that they don't have the sensibility to be able to sit in it.
Right.
You know what I mean? And that's kind of Hooper in this situation, but Brody's sitting in it.
Right.
This is a lifelong vocation of dealing with this type of stuff.
Right.
As a police officer. I mean, he's seeing the worst all the time, and he's just sitting there like, it's another thing. Like, how do I solve this? It's like you see the burden of being the police chief.
He's reflecting on the failure, but also he's like, I don't know what to do next. I'm out of my element.
And Hooper's just an oceanographer. Like he's like, oh, well, the shark is this. He gets
he's the intellectual, so he's very heady,
right?
And he's using that to get through the situation of talking in a very like scientific, detached.
Yes,
way.
Detached, yeah. And then they conclude, let's go open up the shark.
Right. And Brody's like, doesn't the wife says, can you do that? And he's like, I'm the chief of police. I can do anything. And
he's just at that point where he's like, I'm going to use my position to get the shit done.
Right.
You know what I mean?
So they go
without asking the mayor or permission.
Right. So, and also he's very drunk. And they've all, and Dreyfuss had some wine. So, they've thrown caution to the wind. They're not going to let something like that stop. We want to be sure. Let's find out.
Yep.
We'll cut the shark open.
So they go.
And
Brody's crouched down far away from it.
Right.
And it's almost like Hooper, like Richard Dreyfuss, is trying to hit him with pulling shit out.
And that's another kind of funny moment.
Yeah.
And it's the way they position the shark like right up
to the camera.
Under the lens.
Yeah.
So you don't really see it.
Yeah.
You just see Hooper carving it out and saying, well, I'm going through the digestive tract here and opening it up. And he pulls out half a fish.
The bile comes out.
Pulls out a whole fish. He's like throwing it out. It's like, what else is in here? Of course, he pulls. Well, it's like, it's safe to assume he came from swim up from the Gulf. And Brody's like, how do you know? And he throws this Louisiana license plate at.
Yeah. But like the half of the fish that he did throw out went right between Chief Brody's legs.
Right, okay.
You know, I mean, that's how far it slid.
Right.
And he just still sat there.
Right.
So you could tell he's a little drunk, like he's just sitting there.
Right.
I mean, a dead fish has just been slid right to him, you know.
And
the other thing about Hooper, like Richard Dreyfuss in that role, he's elbow deep in this thing, like sliding around the bile and just like, wow. Like you see that he is all about this fucking shark.
Right.
You know what I mean?
He's in his element.
Yeah.
And that's the contrast between the two. Like Richard Dreyfuss is in his element. Brody is so far out of his element.
Yeah.
He's a fish out of water.
It's a big fish out of water.
Right, exactly. So, and then
they're like, this ain't the shark.
This ain't the shark. The kid's not in there. I already told you the bite radius is wrong. And then Hooper says, well, we can go out and find him. He's probably still out there right now.
Yeah.
And Brody's like, I'm not drunk enough, or he doesn't say I'm too drunk to go out there. He's like, I'm not drunk enough to get out on a boat. He's like, yes, you are. So we cut to, now we're on Hooper's fancy science yacht.
And this is where it's revealed that Hooper comes from money.
Right. It's like,
it's not like
are you rich? How much? Me or the whole family?
Right. Exactly. Me or the whole family.
Right.
So you're like, okay, this is very interesting. Now you're seeing this character who comes from a lot of money, but has been able to find something that he truly loves, and like knows a lot about,
right?
But hasn't had to go through the hardships of getting to this place,
right?
From a lower socioeconomic status,
right?
But that's what Quint sees immediately,
right? So
he's like, and he can't get past it.
There's a huge contrast between these two characters, the extremes of like this very intellectual, scientific. Rich,
no hardships
rich guy with city hands.
Yeah, city hands. Great line and a reference to a Humphrey Bogart movie.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
did not know that.
Yeah, they shake hands. Humphrey Bogart shakes hands. He's like, strong hands must be something for, lying or cheating. People are saying, he's like, soft hands.
But Hooper's got skills, like
hands that counted money.
Right,
like almost the exact same lines. In this movie,
those are money
Humphrey Bogart.
Hands. Those are working man's hands.
Yeah.
So it's amazing. It's amazing. We've done so many scenes in the movie. We still haven't seen the shark, right?
Yeah.
And so Hooper,
with the face of the shark.
Right. So Hooper and Brody are in Hooper's fancy science vessel. And they come across this boat.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, that's Ben Gardner's boat. Well, he was one of the guys that went out and hunt the shark.
Yeah.
What happened to him? So Hooper gets his scuba gear. He's like, what are you doing? I got to check something. It's like, what do you want me to do? Absolutely nothing. Don't touch anything.
Yeah.
So he goes in the water in his scuba gear at night.
Yeah.
We got a little bit of lighting from his boat. He's got the dive
and
lights on.
And Courtney and I are like, what the fuck are you doing? Like, even now, in 2023, I'm watching this movie from 1974, you said? Was it
75.
75. And I'm like, don't get in the water.
Right.
You know what I mean?
This guy's dead for sure. In most movies, he would have died immediately.
Yeah. And so he jumps out and he finds the great shark, the great white tooth in the hole.
Well, he's looking at the hull of the boat there because it's somewhat submerged.
Yeah.
And he's like, well, I got to figure out what happened. Mm-hmm. And there's a hole punched in the boat and there's a tooth sticking in the hole. So it's like very obvious the shark bit a hole in the boat.
Yeah.
And as he's going to, or he's removed the tooth, then Gardner's head pops in the hole. That's the first jump scare.
Yeah.
It scares the shit out of Hooper.
Yeah.
He drops the tooth. He's like, he screams underwater. And he gets up and, reports to Brody, like, that was a shark attack. I pulled a giant tooth. And I can estimate the size of the shark it's a great white.
Yeah.
It's a big one.
Yeah, but that is another reason why that quote unquote jump scare in that scene is so much better than modern jump scares. He's discovering something about the monster they're tracking.
Right.
It's attacked this boat, right? And this man is dead inside of it. Oh shit. And he's found evidence to prove it.
Another victim of the shark.
Yes. And loses it.
The body count
because of the jump scare. because he's so scared.
Right.
He
He's
drops
jump
it.
scared.
Yeah, he's jump scared, literally. But it's literally putting the audience in the perspective of the character, literally. In this is like maybe the greatest jump scare.
Oh yeah,
because you lose the evidence and you're like, oh shit. And the next scene, they go to the mayor and they're trying to convince him, like, hey, we found. And he's like, well, where's your evidence?
Yeah, where's your tooth?
I dropped it.
I had an accident.
Well, and then you see Hooper and Brody trying to negotiate with the mayor to shut down the beach.
Right.
Because it's July 4th weekend.
Right.
It's all building to this weekend.
Right.
Right. The biggest weekend of tourism, right? In the country, to be honest. I mean, especially for this small town.
For this town, this is...
But there's a moment in this... The only time where I was like, the acting... there's something that could have been added was when Hooper was like, you can't talk to this guy. Kind of like, I'm dismissing the mayor. Like, the mayor doesn't know what he's talking about. You can't even, you can't compromise with this guy. And then Brody says, no, let's try, he tries to pull him back into the conversation, and Hooper comes in too quickly.
Right.
He's like, okay.
He's very worked up. And he's like...
He got so worked up, he exited the conversation, and then all Brody had to say was like, oh, no, let's try again. And then he goes back in. He's like, okay, so what? I feel like there could have been a little bit more of a beat between those, like, heightened reactions. That was the most you saw out of Hooper, of, like, getting upset at somebody. And then he came right back into it. Mm-hmm. But the scene was amazing overall.
Yeah, great.
And maybe if you put more of a beat into it, it wouldn't have worked, because it would have taken you out of what they were actually trying to do in that scene, which was convince the mayor.
Right, who's still unconvinced. You don't have the tooth. When Richard Dreyfuss says this is like a record giant shark, and the mayor's like, you'd like that to be true because you'd get yourself on the cover of National Geographic. Right. So the mayor is great at spinning things because he's a politician. Yeah, and he's inventing motivations for people to make his ideas work. Right. And Hooper comes up and says, it's very clear to me you won't do anything about this until it swims up and bites you on the ass. Yeah. And then the mayor is deflecting the things, because we see the sign again that we saw in the beginning of the movie. Yeah. But it's been vandalized, and someone has drawn a big shark fin on it and changed the girl's face to a scared face, and she's now saying, help a shark. And the writing is on the wall. Yeah. Very literally. And the mayor can still not see the writing on the wall.
He's just mad that how dare they disrespect this sign.
And he says to Brody, you're not doing your job. You should be out catching these vandals. Yeah. Yeah. That's the real problem. Right. Is the panic. So for him, it's always about the perception, not what's really going on. It's like controlling the perception, the spin of what's happening, the public relations, not the public safety, the economy. And so he's not going to close the beaches. He's like, you're in charge of public safety. You do what you think you can. Again, do what you think is necessary. We've got the extra deputies, the law enforcement in for 4th of July. So that there's been a manpower problem. So that's solved. Yeah. So we're going to get all those guys out there with guns and radios and helicopters. And we'll protect people from the shark. We'll keep an eye out for the shark. Yeah. We just have to stay open.
Yeah. So they go along with the July 4th weekend. Everything's going all right. There's a couple scares where they're like, Brody's checking everything. And then they see this fin pop up. Right. And they're like, oh, shit. Like, out of the water. And
everybody's swimming. There's lots of underwater shots, water level shots. Yeah. You got the guys, the walkie-talkies, the helicopter. Yeah. The crowd.
A lot of great reactions of the people exiting the beach or exiting the water. Some people just froze. Right. You notice, like some of them froze. Like, oh.
Well, there's one young woman who sees the fin. She's like, shark, but it's a large crowd of people.
And some people saw it and didn't say a word.
Right. There's this one guy. He saw it. All he does is he swims to the shore, knocking people out of his way. Yeah. Like, he's, screw you guys. I'm out of here.
Exactly.
And a lot of people are just like, what's going on? Yeah. I don't see the shark. The law enforcement and their boats.
They all come together.
Converge on it. Everybody's out of the water.
The fin comes out of the water. It's two kids.
It's a prank.
Pranking.
And
then simultaneously, or right before that, Chief Brody told his son and his friends to go into the pond area.
Right.
And be safe.
Lagoon,
over there. Yeah, because nothing's going to happen in that pond.
Right. That's not in the ocean.
Right. And as this shit's going down...
Right.
The great white comes into the pond.
Right. So there's another young woman on the jetty, and she sees the fins go under the bridge.
Yeah.
And into the pond, as it's called.
Yeah.
Where Brody's son and two of his friends are playing around with his new sailboat.
Yeah.
That he got. And there's a funny joke we mentioned, or we missed, where at the very beginning of the movie, where Brody's his older son is sitting in his new sailboat at the dock, and Brody's like, I don't like him being out on the water, and his wife's like, oh, he's not on the water, he's just sitting in the boat, he's not on the ocean, he's
right,
and just let him enjoy his present. And Brody's like, well, I just want him to learn the rules, the rules and the regulations and whatnot. And his wife's like, nah, you're overreacting. And then he's been looking through the shark book to learn as much about sharks as he can, because he doesn't know anything about sharks. And then she sees one of the pictures in the book of a shark eating a hole in a boat very similar to the one. And then so she's like, listen to your father.
Yeah, exactly.
So now she's overreacting.
That was a good scene, because a lot of times, if that was a movie now... there's so many times where that's written where the man has overreacted and the woman is just like, don't overreact.
Right. Or maybe vice versa.
Or vice versa. But like she was willing to change her opinion immediately.
Right.
And be like, yeah, listen to your father,
Right.
That goes against the strong female type written today.
I guess. But
I think so.
But yeah, it's a funny moment. It's one of the great. It's another instance of there's some great humor in this movie.
So flash forward, he's on the boat in the pond.
He's in the pond. Someone sees a shark swimming.
The shark knocks over this random dude.
Well, there's a guy in like a rowboat.
Yeah,
it's like, hey, you kids, you need to do this. Or he's trying to give him some advice.
Yeah,
and
knocks him over.
Right.
It kills him.
Yeah, we see the leg fall.
That's his leg.
That's the guy's leg.
Knocks. And that tidal wave kind of knocks their sailboat over, and they go into the water.
Right, or the shark runs into the... It gets knocked over.
A great scene right there is Chief Brody's son looking as it comes past him. Mm-hmm. That was a really cool shot.
Well, we see these great...
because you're thinking it's going to eat his son.
Point of view shots of the shark under the water, but also sort of like over the shark, of it zooming around.
Right. Yeah, it wasn't a POV under the water, but like right above the water. And the boy's like, as it comes past him.
We get to see his reaction. There's so many great reaction shots in this movie.
And I like that because it doesn't just kill everybody. Mm-hmm. Right? That moment, he got out like by the skin of his teeth, really. In some movies, it's like, if you're in the water, everybody's getting killed, it's kind of
instant death. Yeah. Death is assured.
But the shark just goes past him. The boys pull him to shore because he's in shock.
Right.
Chief Brody gets to him. He's like, he's in shock, the mom's screaming.
Is he dead? No, he's just in shock at the blanket.
Right.
They do have to take him to the hospital. There's a great shot of the shark. The shark has gone away. It's gone back to ocean. There's the bridge there's a hole in the middle where it swims under the bridge, and we see a great shot of the camera where the bridge is, the camera frame, the frame of view is, or the bridge is like really, making this picture frame view of out into the endless ocean.
Yeah,
it's out there.
Yeah, it's out there. So, anyways, go to the hospital.
Right.
So back to that scene that we were talking about earlier. Go to the hospital. The mayor comes in frazzled, like, oh my god, like the weight of his stupidity.
Right.
Is slightly coming down on him. Right. Not too much. He's got too much ego for that.
Well, kind of fully. I thought that this was a great scene because we see the mayor come to the realization like he's an idiot. He's made some wrong decisions, And then Chief Brody's taking advantage of this. Like, you're going to do you were just trying to do the right thing. That's why you're going to do the right thing now, which is to sign this document, give me the money to hire this guy to kill a shark.
I love that scene because that's how you deal with a egomaniac like this mayor.
Right.
You're like, you know what? You were doing the right thing. I get it. And now you're going to do it again.
Right.
You have to play into people's egos sometimes.
Right.
Like,
well, you want to make them think that it was their idea.
Because that's the only way certain people will do anything.
Give them the credit.
Jesus. It's very frustrating in life, as you know. Mm-hmm. We talk about this all the time.
Right.
People that you play golf with, people that I even work with.
Yeah.
And you do have to convince people, like, yeah, this is not my idea. You came up with it.
Right.
And that is such it's a character flaw, right, in people that people are completely unaware of. Because if you were to tell them, hey, you know what? You know, when we talk and you decided to do that one thing, you know that I was trying to convince you that it was your idea, but I came up with it, but I was just so good at convincing you that it was your idea that you were able to go with it, because that's the only way that you go with anything is by you thinking you came up with it.
Right.
Really? They would be completely unaware of it.
Well, a lot of people in this instance, if they were Brody, they would have that "I told you so" speech.
And the mayor would not have signed that document.
It would just shut the mayor down more, because if you just said, this boy's death's on your hands. I wanted to close the beach.
Yeah.
You kept me from doing that. This is all your fault.
Yeah.
But tactfully, Brody's like, hey, I understand you were trying to do the right thing.
Right.
You couldn't have known, but that's why you're going to do the right thing now. Yeah. And then the mayor says, my kids were on that beach too.
Right.
So, kind of hammers it home. It's like the mayor is really saying, yeah, I finally get it. And, my family was at risk.
Yeah.
And I didn't realize it. So it's a very satisfying scene to see this guy that was like doing everything to ignore the problem and putting his, greed and, his own needs first. Mm-hmm. And then finally seeing like, oh, I've been so selfish.
And he convinces him to sign the document to hire Quint.
Right.
So Quint and Hooper and Brody meet up.
Right.
And this is a great scene.
A lot of funny
in
moments.
The boathouse.
Right.
Right.
Quint's office.
Quint's office.
Right.
So cool.
He's boiling some shark jaws.
Yeah, I mean he's got shark jaws on the ceiling, or everywhere around.
And he's offers Brody some hooch that he's made it myself. Try this, Chief.
What is that?
It's probably moonshine of some kind.
Okay, got it.
Grog or whatever. Yeah, made it myself. Brody cautiously sips it, waits till he can kind of spit it out.
I didn't catch that.
So he sips it. It sits there.
Classic line. Okay, go ahead.
Doesn't swallow it, and he spits it out when Quint's not looking, and then Hooper's in there. Quint offers him the same thing, and Brody goes, "Don't drink that." But he does anyway. He drinks it. He's like, "Oh."
Yeah. And then Quint says something like, "Here's to dancing with bow-legged ladies," or something like that.
Yeah.
Right?
I think that's what
I have no idea what that means. I texted it to you.
Well, if their legs are bowed, it gives you better access, I guess.
Right. Okay. That's where it makes sense. Here's to swimming with bow-legged women.
Yes.
The accent, that's a real accent.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know where. It must be like Massachusetts. It must be that New England coastal small town accent.
Well, this is.
But Robert Shaw is British.
I thought he was Irish.
Is he Irish? I was watching an interview and it sounded like he was British.
But he's not doing his own accent. He's doing. Is he?
English actor.
Okay.
Yeah. Lancashire, England. He died in Ireland. He moved to Ireland.
Well, he may be an Irish parents or anyway.
But anyways, British accent in the interview. And
well, I think he's doing like the what's called like the New England seaboard, Eastern seaboard accent, where you do actually see some realistic accents in this movie of that area. They're super hard to do. Yeah. But they hired a lot of local people who are saying things, and either you got the Boston accent. But this is the whole movie we shot in Martha's Vineyard.
Yep.
So it's very authentic.
Yeah. This movie made me want to go back and watch Robert Shaw movies.
Oh, he's great. He's amazing.
I don't think I have seen any other ones. I might have subliminally seen movies with him in it and not noticed that it was him when I was younger. But I need to go back and see like his top films.
He's amazing.
Because this role, dude, I'm just like, it's almost like you've never heard of Tom Hardy, right, and then you see him in Bronson,
right,
or one of those, and you're like, that's a real good character he's playing. I bet he does this a lot. Well, let me see if he does this in other movies.
So I think either the next movie that Robert Shaw did, or 2 movies later,
he died 3 years later.
Right.
Or 4 years later.
He was a notorious alcoholic. He was actually drunk
in that scene
many times in the movie when he's on filming those scenes.
Yeah.
But ironically, he was drunk during the drunk scene, which we'll get to, which is like the last.
I mean, one of the greatest scenes.
So they shot that he was drinking. He was doing some method acting.
Yes,
well,
absolutely.
He was drunk all the time. But when they shot the scene where he was supposed to be drunk, he messed it up, like it was unusable, and he called Spielberg later that night. It's like, I'm sorry, can we do it again? So he was sober for the drunk scene, and he was drunk for everything else.
Hold on, what?
Yeah.
I thought he was drunk for the drunk scene.
No, that's acting.
Because I thought I actually watched a review earlier, and it said that he was drunk for that drunk scene. Where did you hear that he wasn't?
I was doing some research.
Okay.
But it sounded real.
Well, I feel like this is a legend.
We'll get to that.
This is part of the legend of Robert Shaw and Jaws. Who knows?
Acting.
This is great.
We'll get to that. Yeah. That's the last. That's basically the last dialogue scene of the movie.
You had this meeting of the minds, and Robert Shaw is alpha mailing everybody. I'm the alpha male. He even tells Hooper, "Make me a knot." And you can he
doesn't really care that he did it or not.
Well, the way that Robert Dreyfuss threw it at him, Robert Shaw's like, nah. I heard, and this might be wrong as well, but that Dreyfuss and Shaw were butting heads the entire time. Oh, yeah. And I could see it in the performance for sure. Because when he threw that knot at him, when I was watching it, and I saw Robert Shaw was like thinking, you motherfucker. Right. You threw it at me? Okay, I don't give a fuck about this knot. And he went right for the hands. He grabbed his hands. He's like, look at these hands, And he calls him out.
Kind of money.
Yeah, he calls him out for being a rich,
right.
non.
He's not an islander. He's not a true seaman.
Yeah,
even though
no hardships in life, kind of.
Well,
a thing.
Hooper has told him, I know what I'm doing out there, because basically Quint's like, you're ballast. You're not coming up. I'm going out by myself. And then Scheider says, well, it's my dime. It's my charter. He comes, and I think that's the last line, and he's like, well, take him for ballast, chief.
Right. And then he grabs his hands and he says that shit.
Yeah.
And then I thought it was great for Robert Shaw's character, for Quint to say this, to point this out. But then it was also great for Hooper to be like, I don't need this working class hero shit.
Exactly.
Because that's such, I feel like one of the biggest rifts between people is that lower socioeconomic status life and that higher socioeconomic status life. We're humans,
right?
We're all similar, but it's so hard to understand that life when you're from this life, and that life when you're from this, or the vice versa. It's just a hard thing to understand,
right?
And neither one is willing to give in,
right?
You know what I mean? Like, nah, you're not special, and he's like, well, you're not special,
right?
And you're like, all right, I guess that's what we're going to agree on,
right? Well, yeah, Hooper says I crewed on two, what is it, America's Cup teams. Like, that's some serious sailing, best sailors in the world. And he's like, I'm not talking about pleasure boating. I'm talking about real working man, working man boating. It's the different. You do, that's for fun. This is like, and he's basically like, when you've got, what is it, 500 pounds of fish in the net, and there's a shark in the water, and it's like going to eat all your money up, and if you don't do it right, like either you're going to die, you're going to lose your fish and go, like, there's real stakes. Like this America's Cup, that's BS stakes. Yeah. There are stakes to what I do. Like, it's a dangerous job.
Right.
And I do this to make money, and if I don't do it right, I die or I go broke.
Right.
But you wouldn't have to worry about that, would you?
Right, exactly. And then so that's going on, right? And then they decide to load the boat up.
Yeah, they're loading the boat
up. The wife comes.
Right, to see off the husband.
And she's like,
what do I tell the kids?
Yeah. And he's like, just tell them I'm going on a fishing trip or something like that. Right?
Right.
Going out boating or something.
We forgot to mention in the hospital scene before Brody and the mayor confront each other. He's like, take the kid home. And she's like, home New York? And he's like, no, home here. So we've established like he's making a stand. Like he's not going to cut and run.
Yeah.
Like he's going to see this through and make it right.
Yeah, you really are. I mean, the way this is written, the character of Brody is being doubled down on in each progressive scene.
Right.
As it gets worse, as the story progresses and the stakes get higher and higher, his character, and that's what allows you to create a great character, is pressure cooking the character. It's putting him in these situations where it's like, okay, if he's the man that he says he is,
right,
he's got to do this. How is he going to do this uniquely as this character? Put more stakes on him.
Right. Well, we said he's out of his element.
Yeah.
And so he has to rise to the occasion. He's got to figure it out. There's a lot of movies where we're dealing with a superhero not out of his element. This is what he does all the time.
Yeah.
And they have to figure out some way to make it difficult for him.
It's always the origin story. That's the best movie. The first one.
Because again, the hero's out of his element. He's got to
become the hero. Yeah. And then after that, it's very hard.
And they were originally going to cast Charlton Heston in this role. But
as Quint or Brody?
As Brody.
Okay.
But he had been in all these other hero movies where he was this invincible superhero at the time. And they thought, it's not, but we got to make it, we got to raise the stakes. So we think like Brody could fail.
Yeah.
Because he is out of his element. He doesn't know what he's doing.
Charlton Heston always succeeds.
Right.
Yeah.
There's no stakes.
Yeah. All right, so they get out on the ocean.
Right, they're out on the ocean.
And
they're leaving the docks. It's like, oh, we're getting this great shot.
And the score kind of put me in an adventure movie.
Right, this is like where the adventure begins.
Yeah.
An hour and 11 minutes into the movie.
Crazy though. But like at no point was I like, this is slow.
No. And
Courtney cannot watch older movies, especially black and white, because of the slower pace. This is not one of them.
Right.
It's amazingly paced. So they get out in the ocean. And you see more of Quint, and you see more of the relationships of how they're bouncing back and forth between each other. Brody's completely out of his element, hates water. He's got the chum work, right? Because that's all he can really do.
Right.
Quint tells Hooper to navigate,
right,
steer the ship. Yeah, and he's got the rod. And dude, when he puts that rod out, that was a great scene. The pacing, he's watching it.
Right, very slowly.
And the rod's ticking, and he just, like, he is all about this thing. He's a hunter. Yeah. You see the hunter in Quint.
Yeah.
In that moment.
He knows what he's doing, strapping into the chair, buckling everything in.
Straps. Like, he's all in. Like, you're like, this guy's legit. Like, he's not a talker. This guy's the real deal.
Yeah.
And so all these things are happening. And I feel like when they're out in the ocean, that's like a short film in itself.
Oh yeah,
like once they get out there,
it's two parts of the movie. This is like a completely different.
It's a different movie in many ways. Because when you get out there, you've got to build up to catching the shark, and then you got the boat starts breaking down, and then you're running out of those floatable devices to tag the shark with.
Yeah, the barrels. Things are breaking. The boat's falling apart.
Yeah,
there's a great. I don't know if you call it a dichotomy or a trichotomy, but a relationship with the three characters. We've got Dreyfus, rich intellectual guy. Quint, salt of the earth, grizzly guy. And then Brody's in the middle, and he's got to figure out how to manage these two people. Yeah. Like, they're both telling him different things, and they're both experts. And he doesn't know which one to go with, and he's got to figure out how to get these guys to work together. And it is it's so successful. There's a lot of similarities to Star Trek with, like, Kirk, Bones, and Spock. So Hooper is Spock. He's, like, the intellectual guy. And Quint is Bones, who's, like, the salted, down to earth. It's all about, feeling. And so Brody's got to somehow synthesize this and figure out what's the right thing to do.
Yeah.
And manage them so that they don't kill each other.
Right. Yeah. And then, so all this is going on, and Brody is the first one to see the shark.
Right.
In that iconic scene.
Right.
Where it doesn't just pop up. It pops up in the frame and then goes out of frame.
Right.
And then his head jerks out.
Right.
And then you see him pop up and the cigarette's still there.
Right. He's got the cigarette.
And he just slowly backs up into into that, I guess, the hull of the ship or
the cabin.
The cabin. And
he's like
shock.
seeing a ghost. Like he is super scared.
And then that's when everybody else sees the shark.
Well, he says the iconic line, which is, "You're gonna need a bigger boat."
Right.
And the reason they showed him walk, he walks on the deck. He's on the deck, and we see him back up.
Yeah.
And then we cut to inside the cabin. We see him back up further. So they did that because everybody's reaction to the jump scare is usually like, the fright, but then they laugh it off. And so they found in the test screenings, like, people were still laughing from being scared, and they missed that line, which was totally ad-lib. This is another kind of like takes some beats moment, like multiple beats to let things sink in.
Yeah.
Let things sink in. I'm on a roll here.
Yeah.
But he says, "You're going to need a bigger boat." Completely ad-libbed.
Yeah.
And it's the most quoted line from the movie. Yeah. And it's one of the greatest quotable lines of all time.
Right.
And so this is after, we've hooked the shark on the rod. And Hooper's like, "That's not the shark." He doesn't want Quint to be right. And but the line breaks, and they're using like a steel line. The first, so many feet of it. It's like a piano. He says piano wire, and he's like, "Oh, a marlin wouldn't be able to break this piano wire." It is the shark. Like, they're at odds. It's another great confrontation. Mm-hmm. And he's like, "I know what I do know is you city folk don't, or your college boys
aren't educated
enough to know,
admit when you're wrong."
Exactly.
That's a great line, dude. That's such a good line. And so then they continue battling the shark, trying to find it until nightfall.
Right.
Right. And they're drinking.
Right.
And the way that Quint and Hooper, because like Brody is still like off to the side.
Right. He's still out of his element.
Like, oh my God, like what the hell is going on?
What am I doing here?
How do I do this thing? And then Quint and Hooper are drinking, and they start sharing scars.
Right.
And that's when they're like, "Oh, we have shared scars.
Right.
We have shared difficulties and hardships that we've gone." Because physical pain is something that you can't fake. You know what I mean? You can't fake getting cut,
right,
or experiencing that type of pain that creates a physical scar.
Right.
And that is when you bleed together, you become brothers.
Right.
It's just, you talk to all soldiers who are in a foxhole with somebody or go into battle with somebody, and that's how it was on a wrestling team. When you're beating the shit out of your teammates,
right,
and then you guys go out there and like there's a camaraderie that comes along with like that bleeding and sweating with each other. Mm-hmm. And a lot of people say that they bleed with other people, like we bled together. It becomes a cliche statement. Mm-hmm. And that's where you lose like the real meaning, because like there's a difference between sweating with someone and then also bleeding with someone.
Right.
Like in wrestling, when I crossface somebody, which is I shove my fist or my forearm across their nose, that's how you turn somebody's head. Mm-hmm. If they're on your leg, you stick either this part of your wrist or your forearm underneath their nose, and you lift their head up.
Right.
You bust your teammates' noses all the time, and they bust your nose. Mm-hmm. And so you're literally bleeding on each other at practice. Mm. And then at the end, we bring it together. Great practice, guys. We got a tournament this weekend. Let's keep our minds right. Hold on, you just busted my nose like 20 minutes ago. And then you go out there and you compete together. You know what I mean? So that literally bleeding together forms a brotherhood relationship that just sweating doesn't.
Well, they're bonding over the different scars they've gotten from sharks and other nautical adventures.
Yeah.
And so, there's this bonding moment, but the chief is off to the side.
Yeah.
And it's very subtle, but he lifts up his shirt and he has a scar.
But he doesn't say anything.
He doesn't want to get into that game. And it's probably like something that he got probably shot in the line of duty in New York. That's probably why he moved out there.
Right.
And there's this kind of great, scene because they're like, why did you come out here? Because he's out on the boat. He's super frustrated. He doesn't know what he's doing. And he's like, well, in Amity, one man can make a difference. Like in New York, it's so much crime.
Yeah.
Out here, like the last, shooting was, 40 years ago or something,
Yeah.
And so, that's why I came out here. One man can make a difference. And he's super frustrated because he failed and he's not making a difference now on the boat either.
Yep. Exactly.
So, they have this bonding moment. And is this when Quint gives his famous speech? Or,
it is. It is. But what happened?
Some cat and mouse with the shark that is, going on. But they're taking a break. They're drinking.
Right. And they're drunk.
Right.
And you see Quint kind of childlike.
Mm-hmm.
You see the Quint, like, just the kind of fun-loving Quint come out while he's drunk. Because he's hanging out with the boys and, and he's singing, and then they start singing together.
Right.
And then after the song, he's like, yeah, this is what happened. And then he just tells you, like, what happened to him, because he was a part of the group that that delivered the bomb to Japan, right? Yeah. And then they were shipwrecked, somehow. And
the ship sunk. They're out in the water, in life jackets.
And so he slowly watched his fellow soldiers eaten by sharks,
right?
So it's like, wow, this guy has a relationship with sharks.
So
that is even deeper than Hooper's.
And Hooper's awestruck at this.
Yeah.
He's like, oh yeah. This is actually a true story. This is historically happened. The USS Indianapolis was delivering the bomb to an airfield, somewhere in the Pacific to be loaded on to a plane and dropped on Japan. So it was a super secret mission. So when they were on their return leg, no one was keeping track of them.
Yeah.
And so there was no, they had to keep radio silence. I don't know why on the way back, but they kept radio silence. They wanted to keep this a secret.
Yeah.
And so there's no distress call.
Yeah.
And so the ship gets sunk and all the seamen are out there. They don't know when they're going to get picked up.
Yeah.
So they're out there for a while. And he says, like, I don't know how many sharks are out there. But it's a true story that actually happened.
Yeah.
So this is where the movie gets sort of confusing for me because I forget which things happen.
So what happens is he's telling the story and it's like, man, like, and they're just bonding over this because you really see why he's become the hard-nosed man that he has become. Because he saw his fellow brothers die.
You get his backstory, his origin
and
story.
he's literally seen this how sharks kill, and it's without remorse.
Right.
And these other people don't understand what he, and they acknowledge that, by being silent while he tells his personal experience. So you're at this moment like, wow, like, and you're as a lover of acting, I'm watching the movie like, damn, that performance is amazing. And then all of a sudden the shark rams the boat.
Right.
And
Does it though?
Yeah.
See, there's one line where he does that monologue and he says, I'll never put on a life jacket again. And I thought that's because, if you have a life jacket, you're like bobbing up there like you're like a piece of bait.
Yeah.
And I think sharks supposedly only attack people that are on the surface. So maybe that's why he's like, he's not wearing a life jacket because it makes him easier for the sharks to eat, I guess. Or, I don't know what the logic behind that is.
I think he felt completely helpless when he was in that life jacket. And for him, he just can't do that again. He can't feel that helplessness.
Right.
I think that's haunted him, that PTSD from that helplessness. Because eventually, he hands the life jackets to the guys.
Does he?
Yes. I remember that. when at the very end, he starts handing the life jackets off to the guys, but he doesn't put one on.
Right. I don't think they put one on either.
I don't know if they did.
Don't.
Yeah,
no one puts on a life jacket.
So anyways,
it's a very bad example.
Yeah. But he puts it. He gives it to him at least.
Yeah.
So anyways, the next day they're working on repairing the engine. And then something happens again.
Barrel that they hooked it with earlier pops up.
Right.
So it's like, oh, it's here.
And then things get wild. Brody attempts to call the Coast Guard.
Mm-hmm.
And Quint is just like at his wits' end. He just bashes it. And he's like, we're killing this thing, kind of a scenario.
He's committed to like killing this, kill or be killed.
Yeah.
He's going to kill this thing or die trying.
Yeah. It's like representing all the pain that he went through years ago. Like, this is
revenge.
Yeah, this is revenge for my brother in arm, stuff like that. And so fucking Brody's like, God,
you're certifiable.
You're certifiable. That's a great line.
Yeah.
And so then the boats, or then they get the cage. Hooper gets in the cage.
Right.
He goes in there. Shark attacks the cage, rips the cage open. He loses his spear gun, drops to the ocean, and then Hooper is about to get eaten. Right.
He swims down.
He swims down and just hides under.
We don't know what happened to
the seaweed. Stays out of the fight till the very end.
And so this is very interesting because I did some research, and based on a book. So in the book, he dies. He gets killed in the shark cage, right?
In the shark cage.
Yeah. So the reason they changed it was that there's some footage of real sharks in this movie from underwater.
Okay.
That they are using to make things seem more realistic.
Yeah.
So this is one of the scenes with a real shark where they put a stuntman in a cage, attracted a shark like, Jacques Cousteau does all the time.
Yeah.
And the shark just going nuts on the cage.
Yeah.
And it breaks and the stuntman escapes. So they wanted to leave that footage in the movie. And so that's why they made Hooper live, because he was supposed to get killed in the cage. But they wanted to use the footage of the real shark attacking the cage and the diver escaping.
Okay.
Right? And which works out beautifully for the ending.
Yeah, yeah.
But anyway, yeah. So
I'm glad that they didn't make him die.
It works so great.
Because sometimes you see like the lone survivor cliche.
Right. But we'll get to that, but there's a reason why that's such a better ending. So
Swims to the bottom of the ocean.
Yeah, Brody and Quint are trying to rig a thing to pull the cage out. Shark pulls it. The thing breaks. Another example of like there's so many instances of things that can kill you on a boat that aren't a shark.
Yeah, exactly.
The thing comes down on the deck.
Yeah.
Which could that would crush your head like a grape. If you were under that.
Oh yeah.
There's they're dealing with a lot of ropes that are attached to the shark, and Hooper at one point he gets like pinned to the side of the boat with the rope, which is like cutting him in half.
Right.
They're handling the rope. If you feel that rope tug, let it go. Like that'll take your hand off.
Yeah.
That sort of thing. So we see all sorts of examples on this about this is dangerous.
Yeah. And so I, as a child, only remember the scene in this movie where the boat is upside, is like shifted up, half of it's in the water, and the shark is coming at them from the bottom of the boat, right? I forgot how that happened. And then I'm rewatching it. The shark just took a chunk out of the boat. Mm-hmm. Like literally.
Well, the rear of the boat starts to sink and everything's sliding back. The shark has like breached.
Yeah, just fucking jumps on the boat.
On the boat, it's gobbling. Everything's sliding there.
And then Quint.
Brody and Quint are in the cabin.
So he lost his grip.
Right.
Because one of those
oxygen tanks
hits his hand, I think. Right. And he's like, shit. And then Brody grabs his hand and he can't hold on to him. And then that's when Quint slides into the mouth of the
shark.
The shark. Slightly, for a second, I saw the rubberness of the mouth of the shark. Right. But if I would have seen that in theaters in 1973 or 4, what I can't remember, I keep forgetting, I'd have been like, oh, this is real as shit. Mm-hmm. Because even while watching it now, I was like, this is great. Like, it doesn't look that fake at all.
No.
To me.
Right.
I mean, some people could be nitpicky and be like, yes, it looks fake. I've seen a real shark.
Right.
And it's like, get the...
Most people haven't.
Have you ever seen a real shark jump on a boat?
Yeah.
No, I hadn't seen that. So this looks pretty real.
And I think one of the reasons the shark still holds up is because our characterization of the shark is this robotic, unfeeling, killing machine.
Yeah.
And so when you make a robotic shark for the movie.
Yeah.
Its sort of mannerism or the way that we feel about it is very similar. Like it's a killing robot machine anyway.
Yeah. It doesn't have to make quick movements like a shark would
in our mind. So we're not saying, oh, that's super fake looking.
Yeah.
And so that's Quinn. And earlier in the movie, I think Quinn sort of foretold the way he was going to die.
What'd he say?
I forget which scene it's in.
Yeah.
But he's like talking about like what happens when a shark eats a man or something like that to scare people. Maybe it's even in his introduction about how dangerous sharks are. At some point, he sort of foreshadows that. And then the thing with the oxygen tank is also foreshadowed a few times in the boat, like right before he hooks the fish. You know, so, he's told like
he knocks over
some line. He's got the oxygen tanks. He pulls the wrong line. The oxygen tanks go out onto the deck. And, Hooper says, yeah, you pull the wrong line. If you fool around with these things, they'll blow up.
Right. Yeah.
So we got to establish that.
Yeah, exactly.
So, and then, Quint says to Brody, next time, ask me which line to pull.
Yeah, exactly. So Quint's getting eaten. Getting drug around.
Right.
And then pulled out to sea.
Right.
And then
we kind of get another few beats of like, there's nothing. Where is it?
Right. And then it comes out. It comes from the other side.
Yeah, the side of the boat
smashes through a window,
through the wall,
and then I can't remember.
And that's when Brody grabs the oxygen tanks because they come loose another time or two before that. So it's like we've got to set this up,
and then shoves it in.
These things are always flying around, and they hit. The oxygen tank hits the guy's hand, which is why he fell. Yeah. So the oxygen tanks.
So it's in there.
Established.
Sees it.
They're moving around all the place. They're very wily. And so Brody grabs the oxygen tank. He's hitting the shark with it, and then he just like throws it in the shark mouth. He's like, chew on this or whatever.
Yeah.
And
goes out to sea.
Right. Then the shark backs away. Yeah. Got this thing stuck in its mouth.
Then Brody climbs out to the, what's that? The steeple?
He gets his guns.
What's that steeple?
The mast.
Yeah. And he's like laying side, which is an awesome scene, dude. Just laying sideways.
Now he's in his element. He knows he knows guns.
And
he can
use a gun.
Use it. He's laying on the mast and just a great pose, and his eyes, the way he's shooting, we really believe that like
he can do it.
He can do this. It looks super real.
But one thing I didn't see in this scene, which you would see in a modern movie, is that last moment where the shark would try to attack and him open his mouth, and then he would shoot the thing, the oxygen tank. That didn't happen in this.
It didn't?
It did not, dude. He's shooting as the shark's coming at him. And he was like, he said something.
He says, "Smile, you son of a bitch," and then
he shoots it, but you do not see him hit the tank, and you do not see the tank exposed again.
I think I'm going to argue with that, but you do see the tank.
Okay, cool. I'm gonna pull it up.
I'm not sure if you see you don't see a hole punched in the tank because that's what would happen. So while you're looking at that, the MythBusters actually examined this scene on more than one occasion to see if this is plausible. Does a shark tank blow up if you shoot a gun at it? In their first test, they shoot a gun at the bottom of the tank. It pokes a hole in the tank. All the air escapes out of the hole. It basically turns the thing into a rocket. And in other cases, if you did drop a tank and you drop it on the valve and the valve breaks, same thing. All the air escapes rapidly, and you've got like a 40-pound metal tube flying at you at 100 miles an hour. But they didn't get it to explode. When they revisited it, they actually had to use explosives to get the tank to rupture in that way. So I would think, and I looked up like what's the bite force of a giant great white, because this is a huge great white shark, not just a regular great white. That it's like something almost like 2 tons of biting force. And so I'm like, I think that more plausibly the shark would have bitten the tank and the tank would have exploded. He takes a few shots at it.
Now, we people who are listening cannot hear this because we don't want to get screwed. But we're watching it. So he's shooting the shark.
So we do see the tank under the water right there.
Yeah. The heck is going on here? Cool.
So he takes the second shot. He hits the shark. He misses the shark. He takes another shot. It misses. And he says, "Small, you son of a bitch."
I was wrong.
Boom. You have the education enough to admit you're wrong.
Yes. I love that with the blood on his face.
Right. And then it's like, pure jubilation.
And then the sound, the theme.
It's almost a dreamlike kind of mythical.
And you see this body. You don't even see the whole body. It's just so much blood coming out.
And you see some fins sticking out of it.
As it falls to the bottom of the ocean.
It disappears in its own blood. It's great.
Yeah.
So he's super happy. He did it.
Such a great movie, man.
It's so satisfying.
But what's interesting is, Hooper comes back and, they swim back to the ocean.
Hooper's like, what did I miss?
they come back to the beach. And then the scene that we end on.
Oh, yeah, it's great.
It's just the coast.
So they're paddling back to coast, and Brady says, "I used to be afraid of the water." And Hooper says, "I can't imagine why." That's the last two lines of the movie. And it's kind of funny, like, why would you be afraid of water? and that's basically the same shot.
You can hear this, right?
No.
You can't hear any of this?
No. But it's a great shot of them, of the same beach that we saw at the beginning of the movie, that the girl runs out.
Interesting.
It's very similar, if not almost the exact same shot that they had in the beginning of the movie of when the girl runs out to go swim, although very brief. And it's a very far away shot. You can barely make them out as they're kicking into the beach, but we know that they made it home to safety.
Yeah.
Right. And the movie's come for, full circle.
Yeah. Well, that's it, man. That's so look at this. It is under the categories of suspense, adventure, ominous, tense. Right. So it's suspense and adventure. That would be my explanation of the genre of movie.
Right.
I wouldn't put that as a horror movie.
Right.
But it's in the genre.
It uses a few horror movie tropes.
When people say horror movies, they always talk about Jaws. But what do you think? So after rewatching this,
so it falls within, what Save the Cat, if you've ever read that book, has 10 movie types. It's a monster in the house type movie. There's a monster, it's killing people, the body count's rising, we got to kill it.
Yeah.
And so it falls into that. There are those things that became cliche or tropes that horror movies use of the horny teens, drunk, now they're vulnerable. It's a distraction.
But would you classify this as a horror or, like they said, suspense adventure?
Yeah, I think it is more of a suspense adventure movie because they do show some gruesome stuff. Yeah. But they don't go overboard, especially horror movies. The more as they went on, got grosser and grosser, and more gratuitous, and that became the point of the movie. It wasn't about the acting or the dialogue. It's just how can we gross people out the most? Yeah,
that's certainly a subgenre of the horror genre.
The torture porn.
Yeah. But just horror in general, it doesn't. Most horror movies do not have the element of adventure.
Right.
You know what I mean? Because Lord of the Rings could be considered a horror movie. Have you've seen Lord of the
Rings? Yeah.
But it could be considered horror, especially Two Towers with all the orcs. That's you're fighting monsters in a way,
right?
But there's more adventure underlining the story and
they're actually going out to pursue the shark. I mean, they're also being hunted by the shark.
Yeah,
they're actually going out. Usually, horror movies like the slasher movies, you're being hunted by Freddy or Jason.
Yeah,
you're not going after it. You're trying to get out of there.
Right.
You're trying to escape the house, not kill them. I mean, I don't know how all those movies end with somehow they kill the monster, but they're trying to get away from it. They don't want to they don't want to really kill it. They want to get the hell out of there.
Which is something that we have to do when we talk about The Exorcist, which I will have to make you watch.
Okay, one of these days.
But cool, man. This was great. Episode 2, Chapter 2.
Right.
Of the first volume.
Of BT and Cody Talk About Movies.
Yeah, whatever we're calling it.
Right. Don't forget to subscribe and like and If you want us to review a movie, leave it in the comments.
Yeah.
And we might do it.
We might do it if we think your comment's worth it.
Right.
All right, man. This is fun.